Trahan.
Here.
Greg Rollins. Greg Malou.
Here.
Ed Provo here. Thank you. We've got two sets of minutes to approve, so we'll go with April 4th, 2023 minutes. Do we have any comments or suggestions or motion to approve?
So moved.
Second, Alec. Adopted the minutes of April 4th, 2023. Minutes of April 20th, the special called meeting.
You need to ask for everyone's approval too.
Sorry. To have I?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you. April 20th, special called meeting. Review of the minutes, comments, motions to approve.
I move the minutes be approved as submitted.
I second.
Thank you, Katie. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Staff and community reports. Got anything?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Anything from the back of the room? All right. Old business. We're discussing the building permit expiration, a zoning code amendment that is in your documents. Make one note, the fee that is in there for discussion purposes. That is not to be determined by the planning commission, but by the council, elected officials. But it is in there for discussion, just so we could get this moving and discuss it. If you've had time to review it, great. If not, I'll tell you very quickly. This started with Nate and I. Tried to throw something together because our current zoning ordinance is very vague and almost impossible to enforce on this. And we felt it was necessary to put some solid language in on what it means to be substantially complete at 10%. So, any comments or discussion from commissioners?
I have some comments and
Good.
questions. So the way that I see this reading, it starts partway through the current ordinance.
Correct.
So does that mean that the beginning of the current ordinance would be omitted?
No, it was an addition to.
Oh.
The language was to clear up what was meant to be in compliance with putting work in place on your contract and clearly defining it. But it's open to interpretation and review and amendments if anybody has any comments. Katie, you want to take that part?
So I was just kind of going through it, and so about halfway down the page is where like the addition starts, right? Okay. So I did just want to make sure we weren't omitting the beginning part of it because I felt like that was very important.
It is. I agree.
And so when we get to the part that's the addition, I did just have a few comments.
All right.
So regarding substantial progress,
Yeah.
I think it depends on the size of the project for the substantial progress, and that maybe like 10% of the value based on the permit really can be different depending if it's a small project or a large project, and like material costs could be considerable depending on what they are, and just having those materials on the job could be a huge part. So in my mind, maybe it should be certain milestones for the project that should be agreed upon before they pick up their permit versus just saying it's, 10% of the cost of construction based on the value of the permit. Because also the owner or the builder is coming up with that value generally when they submit for their permit. And, you know, it just seems very subjective. So that's one thing. Versus like if you're looking at a construction loan or something like that, there's line items, there's milestones in that. And I just think it should be something that we should look at. The other thing that I think this is really important, and I understand, you know, why we're doing this, and I think that it is critical that we do it. At the same time, we want to do it where we're not going to be challenged in court if it comes up. And so when you're talking about the weather delays, I think that just needs to be looked at a little bit more closely, that it's not just rain. So maybe taking a closer look at, with Tennessee law and what typical baselines are, because there could be snow or ice or extreme winds. We don't want to just get caught, you know, with something down the road where we weren't taking everything into consideration.
Well, it's out there for discussion. Thank you. That's what we're trying to do, get input on this and get it in the books as quickly as we can. Other comments, Alan?
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible to suggest that this be entitled additions to the Monteagle zoning ordinance, since it doesn't seem to replace anything currently in the ordinance, but follows directly after the third paragraph of section 1203? I think that's one of the things Katie was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What are we revising? I don't think we're actually modifying any of the current language. So
I'm comfortable with that.
We've made it clear this is just an
Well,
additional
3 was really vague.
insert to the ordinance. It might help.
And we're trying to put some teeth in it. Travis, question for you, sir.
Additions?
When we determine the amount of a building permit, does that come off a standard like RS means or anything, or is it just what the owner tells us it is?
As in the building materials?
The cost of the permit is based on the,
This is based on building materials and based on the actual building cost for the whole project.
yes?
They give me a rough price on that, and then turn goes to bid for the evaluation on the breakdown for the overall price.
Okay.
We don't have access to the construction contract or their construction loan or any of that sort of documentation.
No,
But they-
we're just taking a written word on this. And this project is gonna be, you know, it's a wide open area for me, because say if I'm doing the building myself, I'm gonna have this project as a self-build on a residential. My building cost is gonna be cheaper than that if I had hired a GC to do this and give me his cost on it.
There are standards out there that you can draw upon, cost per square foot for different types of projects. RS means being one that's been used a lot, that will give us your concern, to give us a better idea of what the project's really going to cost. Yes, Mayor.
As I recall, AIA, and correct me if I'm wrong, Travis, has a schedule by work done.
Yes.
Roof completed, rough plumbing, rough electric, et cetera.
Yes,
And maybe that would be a better description than the 10%
that's right. That's kind of a format to an estimated standard, if you know what I mean.
of
Do you
work
get
in
us-
progress, so to speak.
Do you get a schedule of values or just a raw number?
Just raw numbers.
Schedule of values would help you a lot, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
We need to look at that.
It actually helps the system, I think,
Yes.
on a more devised cost.
Okay.
And what happens after 12 months and they haven't met the 10% and they get the 6-month extension?
You tell me. It's here for discussion. Well, how do we address it?
You're 18 months into it, but so if there's a work stoppage for whatever reason, I don't see any teeth in here.
Right?
They've only met 10 months, so is that a perpetual after 18?
No, it's an attempt to put teeth in this, and we need to carry it further. This, as I said, this is just a template to build on, and we're getting some good ideas here. But yes, it has no teeth about what do we do next.
Yeah, and I think I hadn't thought of this, but I think what Katie said about milestones, to
Yeah.
me, you would would have milestones, I mean, they should give you an estimate of completion on the front end.
They could.
And then if you've got milestones in there at the end of 18 months and they just stop for whatever reason.
That schedule of values on all 16 divisions of construction would be a big help.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
so,
all right.
I'm not sure, I'm not following the 18 months. It seems to me that this says 6 months, after 6 months, the building permit can be voided unless the enforcement officer extends it for an additional 6 months. But after 12 months, then if there's no substantial progress, the building permit is void.
I think what Richards is saying, where do we go from there? What happens at 18 months if we don't hit the tripwire at 12 months?
in this case, they could get an extension and do nothing and only have met the 10%. And there's no teeth here after that.
I understood it to say that the building permit is void if after 12 months, assuming they get a 6-month extension, there's not substantial progress.
What's the goal for the next 6 months?
They would have to apply for a new building permit,
Okay.
right?
Does it
Would
say
we
that?
revoke the permit at 12 months?
It says it's void.
It's void, so they'd have to apply for a new one.
Travis?
Does it
This
say
was
that?
a revocation of permit on section 105.5 in the International Building Code, which says that there's 180 days that that permit has to either initiate and take action to take effect, or work in, construed as done or progress, whatever. All this goes down to the building official that makes that call. You can give a written request for an extension of a permit that's granted through the building official. That's under the International Building Code.
Okay.
So that building code allows the building official to extend this permit based on the 180-day rule is what I like to call it, because that's what everybody knows that is.
All right.
So, there's really not per se a expiration on this, as long as there's work being done and it's a notable work and notable progress of the construction is being, stated on the permit.
Well, it seems to me this says after 12 months, the permit is void if there's been no substantial progress. It doesn't talk about any
That would be my
further
intent.
extensions by the building official.
All right, that would be my intent, that it be local code, that at 12 months, the permit is revocated.
I'm sorry.
All right. Further comments from the commissioners?
Well,
That's
just
good stuff. Go ahead, Mayor.
after the 12 months, they would probably incur some kind of cost for the project site or sketch plan must be updated and resubmitted to the planning commission prior to the issuance of a new building permit. So if after the 12 months it's expired, they'd have to resubmit, is what I'm reading. Is that
Yes.
the action that we want to follow? Because in talking to the attorney on this and several other matters, it cannot be a profit center. 500 may be too much. What's involved to renew a permit or review a
Jason,
site
I
plan?
don't care about the price. Let's
No,
get
I
the
know what
language
you're
right
saying.
and let you elected officials figure out how much it costs.
Well, that's a part of the resubmission.
Right.
That's why I brought it up.
Again, Travis?
And this permit goes back to what we said in our oversight meeting, when we was talking about in justifications of grading and excavations being done on the site. So if this is, in my interpretation, that's all building code is. You and I may read it differently, but I'm the man that interprets that code and has to understand it. So is grading and excavation named in this building permit in this 12-month phase per se for this site plan before the expiration? And if it is, what are we calling substantial work and showing progress within the excavation? Does that make sense?
Comments from the public? Anyone have comments on this? Please speak up if you do.
I thought grading and excavation would count as substantial progress, because then you've got it listed below, design costs, stored materials, and fees cannot be included in the sum of substantial progress.
Grading would be included in work in place, yes, it is. So we've got some input here. Katie brings up the potential for milestones and asking, particularly on bigger projects, asking for schedules so we can look at those milestones. We have schedule of values that has come up that I think is a good tool. Richard's brought up the point that we put language in here that at 12 months, we revoke the permit. So I think what I will do is, I will put some modifications here, we'll bring it back, we'll chat over it again. And the sooner we can push it into council for 2 readings, the better. And I think everybody understands that. Comments, please.
That, this made me think, that it provoke a comment in the sense that the International Building Code has always defined substantial progress all the way up until the last revised edition of it. And that was, in the past, always the pouring of footers and did not include grading and excavation. Sometimes those books, like a lot of things, can be politically motivated. Not saying that it is, but now that in the International Building Code, there's no definition of substantial progress anywhere in the International Building Code. They used to be in the definitions, and the definitions all the way up until the last 6 months has always read the pouring of footers, did not include grading and excavation.
It's a good point.
I mean, you can take
Very good
somebody,
point.
it's always been that way. I don't know why they changed it, but the point is that somebody can go out there and push a pile of dirt around, for 4 years.
We have someone pushing a pile of dirt around, yes. And you're right, it may be we need to define grading as part of the building project itself, as you say, footings, all right?
Right. Other cities have it defined in the same manner, and we always have here. It was actually included on our website, but it was taken down. The grading excavation did not include substantial progress.
Thank you. Further comments? Thank you, Commissioners. With that, we'll move on, and I'll resubmit next month with added revision for discussion. Yes, Alan?
I'm sorry, I know you want to move on, but I have an additional thought. Would it be possible to say that the permittee, if it wants to maintain it's made substantial progress, shall convince the building official by demonstration of its construction contract schedule of values or other evidence that it has? They don't normally give us
Good
this
concept.
construction contract, but if they want to argue about this, they in a sizable commercial project, there's going to be a schedule of values.
Absolutely. And a flow chart.
And I'll thank you that. A phone call today from Taco Bell. And the gentleman, they were pouring footers, laying rebar. The gentleman said, I've got a third-party inspector on the site with me, an engineer. Do you want to come and look at this, or do you want me just to get your report? The answer is, I'll take his report, because that's what that man's been about. That's his expertise.
Correct.
So, if there's a geologist, somebody that's involved with or an architectural designer, whatever that's involved with the grading and excavation that can give documentation and support to provide for liability for the town, I'm good with that.
And buy you time to do those things I asked for, won't it?
That's right, yes.
Maybe it could be that the applicant for further extension of the permit shall bear the burden of proving by adequate evidence that it has made such progress, substantial progress.
I like the velvet hammer approach. We put it in there as a tool to clearly define what we're going to look at, instead of telling them up front they have to provide it. Because then, if we think their number's a little weird, we can always go back and ask for it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Anya, any comments, any input? Okay, we'll bring it up again. Thank y'all. Now we'll move on. New business, Volunteer Behavior Health Services Site Plan. I understand Mr. Sams couldn't make it, but there is a representative, is that correct? No, there isn't a representative. Okay.
Is there anyone here for volunteer behavioral health services site plan?
Anya, comments?
We can't make a motion. I guess we'll have to deny the site plan based on there's no representative here, but.
Do we need to vote on that? Probably.
Yes, I think we need to vote on it. I will say that just based on my back and forth with him and the discussion I had with the commissioners, we had talked about wanting him to add more parking, which the owner did, add more parking for visitors since they're increasing the number of people using the facility. He got his the overhead utility line checked out, everything's good with that. And then most of the commissioners who responded to me were in favor in accepting that to be a side setback rather than a rear setback, because it is a corner lot.
Is this going to require zoning?
There's no variance requirement
Okay.
in that. it's just up to interpretation of the corner law. There are other communities in this region that do the same thing. They consider it to be a side setback if it's a corner.
Comments, commissioners? Alec?
I move on the basis that no representative appeared tonight, that this be denied.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion.
Just a minute. Comment, Mr. Mayor?
If it's denied tonight, when can he reapply?
Yeah, I mean, if the site
The
plan
next
doesn't
meeting.
change, I'll just notify him that a representative wasn't here. I'll email him right now.
No, and that's fine, but can he be at the next meeting?
Yes.
With what, okay.
Yes.
Further comments? All in favor? Opposed? Passes. Hearing of persons having business. You have business here?
Well,
Mayor?
I've been asked at this point of the agenda to review the C2, C3 zoning changes or zoning ordinances, whatever, to the point that there is no use of C3 in the existing C2 zone, meaning that someone is going to put, I think, a storage unit or something in a C2. He is not going to do that. Whatever is there is existing, so that would not be affected by the change. So we're to look at, I think, saying no storage units or whatever was in the industrial areas to go to C2. Did I state that properly?
I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah, so there seemed to be some confusion on that because there was an applicant who wanted to put a storage facility where now that laundromat is going in, but he did end up buying that property. So there hasn't been any newly proposed storage unit facilities, but this ordinance grandfathers the existing storage facilities in C2. You're just protecting that zone from having any more storage units put in C2. They'll now be only allowed in C3.
Only in C3. Further comments, Mayor, on that?
No, that was my
Any
point.
actions that we need to take on this?
So that's up to you all, because I know that I talked to Nate as well about city council denying that ordinance on the first reading. I didn't know if there was anything else that needed to be addressed before it goes back. Is it going to go back before city council?
Councilman Wilson, would you please update us on what happened at
Sure.
Yeah.
I can only speak for myself. So the ordinance was put forward to move storage units out of C2 into C3 and also to redefine, I think, propane tank sales out of as a non-hazardous sale. And when I looked at it, having known that the Planning Commission had just recommended approval of a storage unit in C2, I didn't understand why within 60 days that something had changed, and it seemed incongruous. And so I wondered why we needed to take it, what was the impetus behind taking the self-storage units out of C2? Why wouldn't we simply add them to C3? And that was my preference, considering that you guys had just approved a self-storage unit. Now I understand now that that storage unit wasn't
Right.
going to happen. And it was less to do with the grandfather clausing in and more to do like what's the thought behind this? What's the thought about behind approving one and then removing that approval from C2? And it was the majority, I think, of the city council's opinion that maybe we just leave it in C2 and add it to C3 unless there was some compelling reason that we didn't know about.
There is no compelling reason, I don't think. is there?
Well, the reason that has been brought up in previous meetings is that you did not want to permit additional storage units in the C2 corridor. Is that correct?
Yes.
We want to move them to C3.
Yes, that was the compelling reason that had been brought up in the past.
What is the C2 corridor? I thought the downtown corridor was
Or not,
C1.
the C2 corridor here and the C2 corridor here, like not permitting any additional storage units in this area,
Outside the
only
central
permitting
business
them
district.
next to the, closer to the 135 exit, C3.
Is that, are there other uses within C2 that we need to look at? I guess,
I mean, yes, but these are the most controversial uses that have come up and something that we wanted to make an immediate change for before we'd started the process of looking into the general comprehensive plan, overhauling the entire zoning map and ordinance. Do you think that if this, I mean, if there are no changes by the planning commission and it goes before the city council again, will there?
I don't think it will. I think you all would have to recommend it to us again. So that's more information than I think the city council had. We didn't understand why
Right.
it was being removed from C2. We understood why it was being added to C3.
Well, that was someone's comment that there was some new venture coming to C2 that was self-storage, and we didn't want to block that. Since that is not happening, I wonder, as a citizen, how many storage units do we need? You know, how many banks do we need? How many truck stops do we need? So I think if someone wants a storage unit, they're certainly welcome to do it in the C3 zone, but to crowd C2 with one more storage unit, I just didn't think maintained the demeanor, the look, the presence of Monteagle, in my opinion.
So now that there's new information, does it still have to come from the planning commission as a recommendation?
I think the planning commission would need to recommend it again, right?
Yes.
Based on this, and you would be able to pass, the members that are also members of the city council can pass that information along when it goes before city council next month.
Would that mean another first reading? That would be a new first reading.
Yeah, we've been doing this C2 to C3 everything for a while now. Howard?
I move that we resubmit to the council the planning commission's recommendation for modifying the C2 and C3 zones that was submitted previously and not approved on first reading.
Does someone need to make a presentation to the council?
Well, I think this is helpful for me. I think in general,
Yeah.
yes, it would have been helpful at the meeting had we had a presentation to understand the rationale
If we knew
behind
that.
it.
Can you do that?
I think this question of, having just, maybe it was more than 60 days, was it 90? I mean, it was fairly recently that y'all had approved a self-storage unit in C2. That was just, it injected some confusion that we didn't know how to deal with.
Anya, should we go ahead and make a motion to resubmit the C2,
Right,
C3
I
discussion?
think Alexandra just did that.
Right.
So we're just waiting for a second on that motion.
I'll
We have a motion second. Thank you, Dan. All in favor?
Well, wait, discussion, please. So what does this mean? It goes back as was submitted, and then what? The
And now
council,
you have new information. There's not going to be that there's no longer that applicant for a proposed storage unit facility, so you're not
So-
blocking any current plans. And so I don't know if the city council.
And it's helpful to know that more broadly, the planning commission feels like we have enough self-storage units and they don't want any more in C2.
Right.
It was not clear.
no, that I understand. I'm just not sure that that motion says that. If you send back the same is that C2 would allow storage units, isn't it?
No, you're
No.
sending back the exact
The
same
same one we
ordinance.
submitted before that takes it.
Oh,
out.
the same one, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Understood.
And it will just be your responsibility to make that
Yeah.
discussion clear with
Understood.
the city council.
I think we'll either appoint or find a member of the planning commission on the council to be at the meeting and make an explanation of what we think we're doing here. You're right. Y'all didn't have a clue, did you?
No,
No,
Right.
none of this was known at the time.
All right. So we have a motion
And a second.
and a second. We're ready for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So, to rephrase one more time, Anya, we're going to take the previous proposal that we sent to the council and resubmit as written,
Yes, no changes.
as written, and we will make a presentation to the council about it.
And I will send Debbie a new public notice
Okay.
this week.
Further discussions on that? Any other business? Anyone have anything they wish to bring to us? It's a quiet night. We won't listen to you on some nights. Might listen tonight. Have a move for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.